Hi, you'll be learning how to make a shirt or knicker in this tutorial. If you have made one before but you do not like the outcome of what you made, or if you have never tried out one before but you want to give it a try, then this video is for you. So hit the like button, subscribe and share this video so other people can see this tutorial and learn as well. You also want to turn on your notification bells whenever I post tutorials. You can get updated on time. I've ruled out an half-inch line so that any measurements I take will be from that line. So what I will measure first is my hip line. My hip line is 7 inches. So I'll mark that down here and move my tape downward to mark my crotch depth. My crotch depth is 10.5 inches. You can get your crotch depth by dividing your hip measurements by 4. So the hip measurement I'm using is 42 divided by 4, that is 10.5 inches. So I've gone ahead to rule my hip line and the crotch line as well. Next, I'm going to measure 10.5 here, that is my hip circumference divided by 4. I'm going to mark that down on my crotch line. I will do the same on my hip line and on my upper hip line. Once I'm done marking, I will just go ahead and connect the points together. The length of this shirt is 19 inches. You can make yours longer than this or shorter. That depends on you. So I'm using 19 inches for this shirt. What I will do next is to connect the points together. Thereafter, I'm going to measure 1.5 inches for my hem allowance. After marking down the 1.5 inches, I'm going to connect using my ruler. Then on the hem, I'm going to measure my hip measurements as the quarter measurement of my hip circumference. Then I'm going to take down my thigh measurements. I'll divide the quarter of my hip measurement by 4. So whatever I get is what I will use to extend this line. So this is your thigh measurement. So you can actually measure your thigh or you use this method. This might give you a freer thigh, but if you want a fitted one, then go ahead and measure your round thigh. When you measure it, you divide whatever you get by 2 and you mark it down. So I'm just trying to ensure that my point is straight before rolling it. Next is to draw the crotch curve. So from this point, I will go up by 1 inch. So this will serve as the guide for my curve line. Then I'm going to use my curve ruler to connect from this thigh point upward to the center front of this shirt. After drawing the curve, I'm going to take the measurements of this extended part and mark it down at the hem area. After that, I would use my ruler to extend the lines at the hem and also connect the point from the thigh line to the hem line. Next, I'm going to mark down my upper hip measurement. I'm going to divide my upper hip circumference by 4 and I'm going to mark that down. I'll take my measurement from the center front of this shirt and I'm going to add 1 inch to the result that I got. This 1 inch that I'll be adding is for my dad's intake. Please note that your waist is different from your upper hip. The upper hip is just right above your hip. So I'll be using my waist measurement for the band, but on these shorts that I'm drafting, I'll be using the upper hip measurement. So by the time I add my band to it, I'm going to deduct more value from the waistline because the waist circumference is smaller than the upper hip area. So from the upper hip line, I'm just going to use this curve ruler to connect down to my hip line. Next is I'm going to draft the darts. So for me to do that, I'm going to divide this upper hip measurement by 2. That's this measurement I have on my paper here. I'm going to divide that by 2. Then I would mark my results down. From there, I'm going to measure 0.5 on each side of what I've marked. Then I'll go down by 5 inches. Thereafter, I will use my ruler to connect the points together. Once I'm done with drafting the back, I'll go to the center front of this shirt and I will come down by 1 inch there. Then I will use my curve ruler to connect these points to my side seam because our waist is not straight. This is the front pattern. Next, I'm going to cut this out and move to the back pattern. So if you're here to subscribe to this channel, please do not forget to do that. You can hit the subscribe button right now, like this video, share to those that it will be useful to, and if you want to see more tutorials like this, I will urge you to turn on your notification bell so you get updated immediately I post new videos. I have just introduced a new paper. This is what I'll be using to draft the back pattern. The back pattern uses up more paper or fabric if you're making use of your fabric. That is, I will have more excess at the sides and at the top part of this paper. But from what we have here, this side is not enough, so I'm just going to glue this to the paper we have down there. I'm done gluing down the paper. Next, I'm going to take my allowance and I'll be taking that on the back paper. So the allowance I'm taking here is 2 inches. So from the front side seam, I went out by 2 inches on the back paper. After measuring that, I will use my curve ruler to connect from the upper hip line to the waist, then to the hemline. From the side seam of the front, I'm going to extend my upper hip line to the 2 inches allowance at the back. Then I will go to the thigh area from the front. I'm going to extend that line by 2 inches. So this is for ease around the thigh area. For a plus size, you can go out by 2.5, and for a smaller size, you can go out by 1.5 inches. Next, I'm going to use a curve to connect the extended line at the thigh area to meet with the line at the center back. I removed the front paper so I can draw the upper hip line on the back paper. So the reason I'm doing this is so you don't get it mixed up, because I've removed 1 inch from the center front of this shirt. Still working on the upper hip line of my back draft, I went up by 1.75 on that upper hip line. Then I'm just going to use my ruler to connect this. Remember, I went down by 1 inch for the center front, but for the back I'll be going up by 1.75. Then from the side seam, I'm going to draw a diagonal line this way to connect the center back to the side seam. This is the new line we'll be working with. Then from that side seam, I'm going to measure out the 2 inches. I'll mark that down. Then I'm going to measure out my upper hip line measurement. That's a quarter of it plus my 1 inch for that allowance. So whatever I have left, I'm just going to mark that down. Whatever I have left, I would cut off. If you don't cut the excess off, the back of this shirt would gape, and I do not want that to gape. That's why I'm going to cut it off. So I've gone ahead to mark down the excess that I have on this paper. Next, I'm just going to redraw the line. So I'm going to connect from the hip area up to that line. Next, I'll go to the thigh area, the part where I extended the line by 2 inches, and I'm just going to connect these straight to meet with the front paper. So I'm going to measure from my hem line to my thigh line for the front, and I'll do the same for the back. So whatever excess I have there, I'm going to mark it down. But if there is no excess, then you're good to go. So I think I have just a few inches there, so I will reconnect this. After reconnecting all the points together, I will go ahead and cut out the back pattern. The front and the back pattern is ready. Next, I'll be transferring this to my fabric, and I will be showing you the sewing process of this design. So if this is what you want to see, then I would urge you to stick through to the end of this video, and do not forget to like this video so other people can see this tutorial as well. So what I'm going to do next is to place my paper onto my fabric like this. Then I'm just going to cut this out using my paper as a guide. I won't add any seam allowance to the fabric because I have done that already on my pattern. I added 2 inches, if you can remember, to the back pattern. So that is why I won't be adding any seam allowance to the fabric. I'm done cutting, and this is what we have here. I have the back piece and the front placed together. Next, I'm going to cut out my pockets. For the pockets, I'm going to use with 12 inches, and the length is going to be 13 inches. You can increase the length of your pocket if you want to. For the pockets, I'm going to make 2 pieces of this, so for both sides of my pants. Next, I'm going to measure my pocket slant. For the pocket slant, I'll go in by 2 inches. That's for the width. Then for the depth, I'm going to go down by 7.5 inches. From where I marked 7.5 inches, I'm going to go out there by 0.5 inch. Then at the upper hip line where I marked 2 inches, I'm going to go out again by 0.5 inch. That is for the seam allowance. I'm going to place my tape this way to connect the 7.5 inches at the edge of this fabric to meet with the 2 inches at the upper hip line. After that, I'll proceed to connecting the seam markings together. That is the 0.5 inch. Then I'm going to cut along the first line. After cutting along the line, I'm going to open my pockets. I'm just trying to measure these to know which one is the width and which is the length. Next, I'm going to place these pants on it. You see the way I placed it. So I'm just going to measure what we have here. You see what we have here is more than the 2 inches that we cut out from the pants area. The reason is because when I drafted these pants, the upper waistline was shaping, as I removed some value so that that area could be curved. So that value that was removed added to the 2 inches. So that is why we have what we have there. So if it's a straight pant, like if the waistline or the upper hip line wasn't curved, it's just straight, you will have the exact same value that was cut out from the pocket. I'm going to trim the excess that I have at the upper area of this pocket. So I'm just going to fold this into 2, then place the pants over it like this before cutting this out. I'm using the pants as a guide to cut the top of these pockets. Remember, the upper hip line is not straight. I went down by 1 inch so that I can get a slight curve there. I'm going to remove the excess from this pocket, that's from the side of this pocket, and the excess that I have is 1 inch. So I'm just going to remove this using a slight curve. So what I'll be left with after removing this will be 2 inches. So I'm going to place the back piece over this and ensure that the side of this back piece aligns with the pockets. I'll go ahead and open the pocket so you see what it looks like. The slanted line will be joined to the side of the front pants, and this is the upper hip line, that's the midline, and this part will be joined to the back pants. Next, I'm going to cut out my band for this short, and while cutting this band, I'm going to use the back pants measurements. Remember, I added 2 inches to the back pants, so for the band I'll also add 2 inches to it. Then I'll use the front pants measurements, that's for the upper waistline, for my band as well. So in a nutshell, the back band will be longer than the front band. The band width is 3 inches on fold, but when it's opened up, it gives 6 inches. I'll use 0.5 inch for the seam allowance, so at the end of everything I will have 2.5 inch for the band width. Next is the belt loop. I will use 1 inch for the width and 3.75 inch for the length. I folded this into 2, so I have about 10 loops here. I won't be using all though. Next, I'm going to lay one part of the front piece of this pants down, and I'm going to place the pockets on it. There, I'm going to come out by 0.5 inch, that's for the seam, and then mark that upward. I'll do the same for the other parts of the pants, that's the front piece. I'll place the pocket on it and mark where I'm going to sew along. After marking this, I'll just take this to the machine and sew both of them. I'm done sewing this, and look what we have here. Next, I'm going to notch this area so that I can turn my pockets over easily. After notching this, I'm going to flip the pockets open and fold inward this way so that I can sew the edges closed. I'm done sewing the edges of this pocket. Now this is what we have. I'm just going to fold this inward. Next, I'm going to do a top stitch. It's optional, but I'm just going to run a top stitch on this part, the front part alone. You see, I've just folded the other one inward, so I will run a top stitch on the front part alone. I've gone ahead to run a top stitch on this part of the pants. Next, I'm going to place the back piece over this. So I'll be sewing the back piece onto the pockets. To prevent any obstacle while sewing, I'm just going to notch this area so that I can fold the down part of this pocket inward while sewing. So here it is again. I'm going to place the back one over this. Remember, right side to right side. Then I would sew to this place that I've notched, and I would just fold this inward and continue. So this time around, the back piece will not be sewn to the front one once I get to the notched area. So from the up, I will sew the back to the pocket. Once I get here, I'll flip the pocket inward and continue with the front piece. Hope you understand. I'm done sewing this, and see what it looks like. So I'm just going to turn this to the right side so you get a better view. Next, I will flip this back to the wrong side so that I will be able to join these parts of the pants. I'm going to use 1/2 inch to sew this. I'm done sewing. Now I have the two parts here. Next, I'm going to join these two parts together so it becomes one. See the way I place these two parts together? This is right side facing right side. I'm just trying to ensure that the same line of this one part sits over the other, and for this to remain in position, I used my pin to hold it in place. So this is it. I'll sew from this point to the upper hip line. And look what we have here. I've gone ahead to make the two-piece one pants. Next, I'm going to fold this pocket area. But before I do that, I'm going to measure 2 inches for my pocket slants. Remember, we used 2 inches for the pocket width. So I'm going to measure that 2 inches, making sure that my pocket slants sit on that 2 inches. Then I'm just going to use my pin to secure it in place. I'll do the same for the other parts of this pants. And this is it. I've also gone ahead to sew my bed loops and turn them to the right side. Next is the band. I want to add an elastic band to my waistband just for the back piece only. I want it to have like some sort of gather like effect. That is why I'm doing this. So this is totally optional. For me to be able to use my elastic, I added my dart allowance to this band, and I did not shape in the waist area of this band so I can have enough room for my elastic. So for the back pants, I did not sew my darts. I didn't sew the darts for the back pants. So for me to get the right placement of my band, I measured 0.75 at the base there. Then towards the midpoint, I measured 0.25. The width of this elastic band is 2 inches and the width of my waistband is 3 inches. I'm using 0.5 for my seam allowance, and I divided the remaining 0.5 into 2, the 0.25 equally. So one part has 0.75 and the other part has 0.25. I'm gonna head to pin my band onto this pants. I'm going to be using a side zipper for this pants. Next, I'm going to sew this band onto this pants. I'll sew my loops and then the hem of this pants. Thank you so much for watching, and do not forget to subscribe.